Okay, so we are on our way to the BFI IMAX. Talk me through your memories of 10 years ago seeing Gravity for the first time.
Honestly, all I remember is feeling a bit bored. Which
Okay.
I feel really bad saying to you, James, because you're a fan of this film. Is that fair to say?
I always say about how every 10 years or so, when I watch a film, I've changed, and so my views on when I would rewatch films change. I'm like, oh shit, maybe I'm going to be like, this film ain't so good these days.
Oh my God, I would love it if that was you and I was like, this was the most amazing film I've ever seen. I mean, I wouldn't love that. I want you to enjoy the film, but...
So what made the film boring for you? Because I mean, it's a 90-minute film. It's not a long film.
I think it's just my feeling about space in general, which I think it's boredom from some kind of phobia about the idea of being stuck in space. That would be so profoundly boring.
Okay.
Well, it's very scary. But I'm very open to feeling differently this time around. I'm really excited to see it in IMAX, and hopefully I won't feel that way anymore.
I mean, I'm hoping that the experience of seeing it at the best quality picture, largest screen, best sound, does it alter what you think of the film? You know, in 90 minutes' time, are you going to be just as bored as you were 10 years ago? That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, me too. Bring it on.
Okay, so we are on our way to the BFI IMAX. Talk me through your memories of 10 years ago seeing Gravity for the first time.
Honestly, all I remember is feeling a bit bored. Which
Okay.
I feel really bad saying to you, James, because you're a fan of this film. Is that fair to say?
I always say about how every 10 years or so, when I watch a film, I've changed, and so my views on when I would rewatch films change. I'm like, oh shit, maybe I'm going to be like, this film ain't so good these days.
Oh my God, I would love it if that was you and I was like, this was the most amazing film I've ever seen. I mean, I wouldn't love that. I want you to enjoy the film, but...
So what made the film boring for you? Because I mean, it's a 90-minute film. It's not a long film.
I think it's just my feeling about space in general, which I think it's boredom from some kind of phobia about the idea of being stuck in space. That would be so profoundly boring.
Okay.
Well, it's very scary. But I'm very open to feeling differently this time around. I'm really excited to see it in IMAX, and hopefully I won't feel that way anymore.
I mean, I'm hoping that the experience of seeing it at the best quality picture, largest screen, best sound, does it alter what you think of the film? You know, in 90 minutes' time, are you going to be just as bored as you were 10 years ago? That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, me too. Bring it on.
Welcome to Groovy Movies. My name is Lily Austin.
And my name's James Brailsford. Hello.
Hello. And what you've just heard was James capturing on tape my trepidation at being forced into an IMAX screening of a film about space.
Shoved into that seat. Just out. Just going to fold you up there, compact you in.
Exactly. These are the things I do for the love of the podcast and for the love of you, James.
Well, thank you. I'm very honoured.
Well, part of it is that I feel like we have done quite a few episodes recently, you know, the one on witches, the one on the 70s, where James is very much supporting my interests and passions. So I kind of feel like it's only fair that we actually now devote an episode to one of the things you're so passionate about, the cinematic experience.
Finally, hooray.
We finally got here.
Yes, finally. It's Groovy Movies, not Groovy Television, folks.
Not groovy watching on your phone. So why did we go see Gravity, James?
Well, there's a number of reasons. Firstly, it was getting a 10th anniversary re-release, and there's not many films in general that warrant a re-release, and especially not at 10 years. 10-year anniversary is quite a recent anniversary. Films are normally like 25, 50. They're the big hitters. So 10th anniversary is a little unusual. But then also, as far as what I like, which I love going to the cinema and having a cinematic experience. I love getting that feeling that you can only get at a cinema. And I remember seeing it 10 years ago, and I wasn't really expecting much. It was just something to do one evening, but I was blown away by it. I just came out to it saying, I think that's one of the best times I've had at the cinema as far as the overall effect and how into the film I was because of how well presented it was, how well made it was, how good it looked. I remember thinking it's probably not going to be that great an experience if you watch it at home on a TV or just in a non-theatrical environment. It's probably not going to have the same effect. And in fact, in subsequent years, I remember chatting to a few of my friends, and they were like, "Oh, it's boring, that film." And I was like, "Yeah, did you watch it at the cinema?" "No, watch it at home." I was like, I think it's a different experience if you were just fully immersed in the biggest picture, best sound. It felt like a film that was custom engineered to be a theatrical experience. Part of the reason I took this gig, part of the reason I'm co-presenting this podcast with you is to...
I accepted this opportunity.
Sorry. But part of my ulterior motives was like, right, I'm going to be able to pester you into going to see films the way that I decide you should see them, rather than how you like to see them, Lily.
That's true. I don't think when I first proposed the idea of Groovy movies to you, James, I had no inkling that it would become an ongoing project of how are you seeing the film? What kind of screen are you seeing it? What kind of projection or whatever. See, I don't still even really know the words. I mean, the fact that it's even got to this point of where I'm just like, James, look at the screens, the options for me. Just tell me which one I'll go to. And then obviously I often do not. And I feel your disappointment and the sadness.
I'll be honest with you, Lily, the one that still stings to me, and I was thinking about it today, and I was like, oh, God damn it, was when you went to see Avatar in 2D. What kind of crazy person sees the film that James Cameron developed, the latest, greatest, the world
2,
best?
I saw the first one in 3D.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
I believe
Okay.
so. At the I vaguely remember that. I know. Until...
And I was like, and when you went to see Avatar 2 in 2D, I was like, right, there's no more Mr. Nice Guy. I'm
And
coming
I
down
didn't even
hard.
realize, like, until we saw Gravity last week, I thought that 3D had evolved and no one had to wear the glasses anymore. At the time, you did break it to me that I'd obviously not seen Avatar in 3D. But I mean, I had the best time. So this is all evidence to put forward the argument that it doesn't matter. But I'm not going to do that, because I think what we're landing on is the argument that there are certain films that you can only see in the cinema. There are only
or that only work properly, or
Yes.
that only have the desired effect that are in the cinema.
Yes, and Gravity is one of those. Do you think that's why it's got a 10-year anniversary release?
I think that's exactly why, and I think studios are now realizing that TV and just streaming has really eaten into their business model. Like, people need a reason to go to the cinema, and so I think they're realizing they need to. I mean, they should have been doing this all along. They really need to make a point of what's different about going to the cinema. And so they don't have that much good product. You have a Christopher Nolan film that'll come and knock your socks off every 4 years. But Gravity is something that they had on the shelf, and it's a labor of love by Alfonso Cuarón, who spent 5 years working on the project. It's meticulously well done, like a roller coaster ride of a film, really. So I suspect they were like, right, we need something, but they didn't promote this at all. Like, I only knew Gravity was getting a re-release when you'd done some research and you pulled up a list of all the films that were coming out this year that we could discuss. And in the middle of it, it said Gravity. I was like, what the hell? And so I tried Googling it and nothing came up. The only things I could find were articles from 10 years ago. And so I asked you where you got it from, and it was from one website. And I emailed the journalist on this one website, is Gravity really getting a re-release? So he never got back to me. There was no publicity around this. There was no information. And then so I kept checking. On the View website, it just said it was coming up, and it didn't have any times, so you couldn't see what screen it was going to be on. Then it finally got its screens announced, and it was on IMAX. I was like, oh, right, so it is getting an IMAX release, but nobody knew about it. And I was checking the View IMAX, and there was like 2 seats sold for the entire run of it.
Okay, here's what I'm thinking. Newness is the most important thing when it comes to press around films, right? A new release, that is what makes headlines. It's quite a rare thing for anniversary or re-releases to make headlines. So I'm thinking Groovy Movies, this is going to have to be the place you come to get the buzz around re-releases. We've got to make that. That's going to have to be something we champion, because if you couldn't even find one article, you couldn't find any information about this Gravity thing.
Yeah. It was
and
was
I
quite...
even forgot about it. You had to remind me when we were going in that. I was like, how do you hear about this?
And the only thing I could find online was this one website that you sent me.
Which was totally random. It was just luck that I Googled and came across this article about some of the things that were coming up in the months to come.
And I guess as well, it costs money to run adverts.
Yeah, but I think
Which is...
what helps is... So obviously there must have been a press email at some point saying there will be this, and that's why it ended up in that article. But everyone else just ignored it because it's like, oh, well, it's only a 10-year re-release. Who even cares about Gravity? The film journalists did not pick up on it. The media outlets did not pick up. So that's why I'm thinking, okay, this has got to be our cross to bear. This has got to be our, what is the word I'm going for? Our
This is what we're struggling to bring you, the Groovy Movies listeners. We are bringing it upon ourselves to push and promote the cinematic experience that might slip through the net. I do check on The View and the Odeon, just see what films they've got. Because, for example, today they've got The Lost Boys 35th anniversary re-release in cinemas. And Hocus Pocus is also on tonight. I think that's a 30th anniversary release. So,
and whenever we're doing work on a new episode, I'll Google the film to see where I can stream it. And often it will come up at the Prince Charles or something. Old films are actually often being re-released now, but I think probably in part because of the strike. But I mean, that's obviously what the Prince Charles is like known for. But I feel like amplifying those films that are worth seeing in cinema, because the thing is, there are loads of films that are really just laptop movies.
Yeah.
And, well, not loads, maybe.
Well, but for example, I would say films that the effect of them isn't changed depending on where you see it. For example, I really enjoyed, not a great movie, but I enjoyed watching it, Dumb Money. But did I need to go see it at the cinema? Absolutely not at all.
Oh my God, I forgot all about that one. I really wanted to see it. It slipped me
was
by.
all right.
And like one of my favorite documentaries, Wiener, that is like perfect hungover in bed on a laptop movie. It really doesn't need to be seen on a big screen. It's not that kind of a film. And that's great. And we need to have those films. Those are important for when we're hungover and curled up in bed.
Yeah.
But we should definitely be like turning people's attentions to the ones that you've got to see in the cinema.
To me, it's trying to create the ultimate experience, because not all cinemas are created equally. You can pay your £10 and you can get a very, very small screen with very poor quality projection, milky blacks, not much contrast. Or you can pay the same £10 and you can get a pristine, high-resolution, top-notch image.
Okay, I think we need a bit of a, in layman's terms as much as possible, James, a breakdown of the tiers of cinema screen. Because I feel like, I don't know if we've talked about this fully on the podcast before, about your working spreadsheet. Is that right?
My Trello. No, it's a Trello board.
So, okay, yeah, sorry. So please do, take the floor.
Oh, well, no, I have a Trello board where I make my own little reviews of each cinema screen that I go into. It's pretty much Manchester-based, because I'm not going to revisit probably an Odeon Screen 6 in Leicester more than once in my life. So for Manchester, it's like, oh yeah, avoid all of those screens because they are terrible. But screen 17 in View is actually a wonderful screen.
I think when we start a Patreon, we'll definitely have to put that on there, for sure.
Sure, for sure.
Your project should be adding the Leicesters, the wherever you go. I think ultimately we want it to be. Right. That's my ambition for you, is to make it UK and then ultimately global. Because I was looking at our stats the other day, and we have quite a few listeners in the US. Hello to you guys. So they'll want to know too.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, no problem. I'll take my Trello board of screen reviews international.
Please, but to take us behind the curtain before then, we don't want to keep everything behind the paywall of an imaginary patron. So what are some of the criteria?
Oh, well, it's not all about size. It's about the quality. I'm not just... I love a big screen. The bigger, the better, to be frank with you, but also small and perfectly formed I can handle. So
that's more my speed, I have to say.
Right. So what I'm looking for a high-resolution image, like high quality, a lot of image quality in front of you. So we're talking things in terms of K, like most people's television sets these days are 4K. So that's 4,000 vertical lines of resolution. So that's how many the resolution. So if 2K is half that resolution, and then TVs that we watched like 20 years ago were 500 lines resolution. So 0.5K was the resolution of your TV. So the higher that number, the better the image looks, the more detail you can perceive in it.
Okay, so basically you want a 4K.
Absolutely. I mean, that should be the minimum, and 4K has only
Oh.
just in the past few years started coming in as a standard in the cinema. It used to be 2K up until, I mean, 90% of cinemas, you go to a 2K, so they're lower resolution than your TV in your living room, and yet the image is stretched much bigger on a screen. So
Right
you
now,
kinda-
most cinemas.
right now, if you just go to the Odeon or View or any of the cinemas and just pick a screen at random, I guarantee you 9 times out of 10 you'll be getting a 2K lower resolution than your TV in your living room image.
Okay, so if you're going to your general, say, View cinema, is it
Yeah.
often the case that there might be one 4K screen and it's saved for the biggest release? Or how does it usually work? How can we ensure that we're always going to a 4K?
It's totally random, Lily. This is the thing that really
Okay.
pisses me off. What I would say is a good rule of thumb is, especially for things like View and Odeon, the more seats, the better. So I always look at how many seats are in a cinema. If it's like a 50-seater cinema, it's not likely. So if it's a 100 to 200-seater, possibly. So screen one is usually their premium cinema, and probably screen
Right.
one is the best. But that's not always
Right.
the case. I've noticed what Odeon have started doing. This is a really good tip, actually. Odeon have started marking up on the screening times. They'll have a little tab next to it, and it's either got nothing on the tab, it's a blank tab, which means it's just probably a regular 2K screen, but then it'll have Dolby, IMAX, and Laser. And either of those three are going to give you a good time. Laser is basically 4K, but Laser sounds sexier, right? And I would recommend going for at least Laser if you don't want to pay more for IMAX. So I think they are starting to cotton on that audiences need a bit better when they go to the cinema.
Right, okay. And now you've spoken about Dolby and Laser and IMAX. Which is your preferred out of the three? What are the differences?
Horses for courses, Lily.
Okay.
So if it's been filmed specifically for IMAX, then yep, I'll IMAX every time.
Okay.
But not all films have been, and so if it's just like, for example, Killers of the Flower Moon, that is being presented on IMAX, but it wasn't filmed in the format, I'd prefer Dolby Theatre because the sound's better, full reclining seats, and the image is a bit smaller, but it's brighter, and it's got what you call high dynamic range, which is the only projection system that has it. It's basically more brightness levels between bright and dark. So there's more texture and depth in the image.
You said that was what you thought I would be into. That was the
Yeah.
screening for me, because I'm really not a fan of IMAX in general.
Is it really IMAX, or is it just the BFI IMAX's seating is a bit too cramped?
Okay, yeah, you've outed me. It's true.
Like
Yeah.
when you come to Manchester to watch Dune 2, I'm hoping I can change your mind on the comfort factor of IMAX.
Yeah. My understanding of IMAX, because it's quite limited, my experience is limited, I should say, is that it's really uncomfortable environment to watch a film in. But then, yeah, Jane, we've cracked what it is, and it's just that
the code.
the BFI itself is horrible. The seats are really, there isn't much gap between you and the seat in front, and they've got a very steep
The rake.
rake, which we talked about before. Actually, I remember.
I love a
but-
steep rake. I've definitely got issue with the amount of leg room. That's awful. But the rake, I'm here for the rake.
Yeah, you're right. The rake isn't really an issue at all. It's just when there's so little leg room, the chairs are so uncomfortable, and you're watching these really long films, so people are trying to slip past you the whole time. You're knocking knees. It's not nice. It's not
No,
a nice
and-
environment.
Which is another reason why I felt like, well, if we are going to see an IMAX movie together, let's make it a short one, which
Yes.
is another of. So Gravity is a 90 and done. It's it doesn't overstay its welcome. It gets in, gets out.
Exactly. Well, yeah, let's move on to Gravity, because, okay, so I think people are getting a bit of a sense of what the checklist they need to have in their mind when they're choosing where to see a film. It's not just about the convenience of the location and time, even though for me that is sort of always number one.
I mean, I've got to confess, even though I was recommending Dolby for Killer of the Flower Moon, I slummed it at Cineworld Super Screen, which is Cineworld's best quality screen, but it's still not good enough for me. But, it was closer.
Okay, so let's talk about Gravity. What makes it the ideal cinematic experience? I think you've nailed the first point for me, which is that the runtime is ideal.
It's 90 minutes, and I think the story couldn't really sustain much more than that. I mean, shall I give a plot synopsis?
Yeah,
or-
let's do a quick one in case you guys haven't seen it.
It's Sandra Bullock is starring with a supporting role from George Clooney, and they play astronauts. George Clooney's the veteran with lots of experience. Sandra Bullock in almost like the ultimate Sandra Bullock every woman. She's just is she a teacher or a scientist? But she's not an astronaut.
Wasn't she like a doctor or something? I feel like she was a medical person. So she's just the ideal dream woman, very virtuous. She spends her times in hospital and then somehow ended up in space. Nightmare. Very unfortunate. But yeah, she's a newbie. He's an old bee. He's about to retire, right?
Yeah, it's his last. Oh my God, it's his last mission. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and
that's it.
And surprise, surprise. Guess what? Things go a bit doolally.
Just a bit.
There's
Yeah.
just a little bit. I think it's the Russians detonated a nuclear warhead.
Yeah,
at one
I
of
thought,
their
oh wow,
own...
this film has aged so well. Perfect, perfect baddie. Though it was an accident, of course. Was it an accident? Maybe not. I don't know. They never really go into it.
Unclear, that is
Yeah.
for sure. So that explosion sets off a chain reaction of explosions, like the space debris, because obviously there's no atmosphere in space. It just means that even tiny bits of debris are hurtling at the speed of a bullet and all that kind of stuff. So it sets off a chain reaction, and finally the chain reaction of all this debris makes its way towards where they are. And of course, it takes out most of the crew, and it detaches Sandra Bullock from the spaceship, and she's spinning around. And so then it becomes a kind of, how do we get out of this situation? How is Sandra Bullock and George Clooney, how are they going to get back to safety, back to Earth?
So what about that story makes it, all the film makes it so perfect for seeing in the cinema, seeing in IMAX?
It's a high concept film. It's, I don't go watching Gravity for anything that I think exists in the real world. It's clearly like a Hollywood film, but
Do you think? I actually think it's quite low concept. It's
Oh,
simply
really?
a person trying to survive and get home. Like, it could not be more simple.
You're quite right, but it's the fact that it happens to be somebody in space. And
Yeah, but that's actually, I think that's the magic of it. I think it's the strength and also the weakness, that it's so simple.
Ultimately, whatever the plot was to make this work, it needed to be something that is very visual and it's very experiential. Like, you feel a lot of what happened. Essentially, it's the ultimate. To me, it's a tense thrill ride that goes through peaks and troughs. And I think it's almost custom engineered to give you those thrills, calm you down a bit, so that when the thrills come again, you feel the thrills. Because if it's non-stop action all the way, you would just get numbed out to it. So I think having that short run time, having a story that's a very visual-led one, it's lots of sequences of trying to escape the debris or grab hold of something. The larger those visuals are, the more impact that they have.
Yeah, I think that's definitely how I felt when I was watching it. Those moments of imminent threat are really scary. And my heart was racing, and it was very stressful to watch. And
that's the cinematic experience.
yeah, and I think that was all the cinematic experiences, because it was filmed so well that you have no doubt, you feel like you're in space with her. There's never a moment of thinking this isn't really real. It's not like watching Star Wars where it just feels like pure fantasy. This feels like you're very much with her in this environment, and you really feel the fear of the emptiness, the abyss that she's in. I feel like if you don't see that in IMAX, you wouldn't really get that so much.
Those visceral shots and the vistas, the fact that it's set in space and often the Earth is in the background, these are epic images to a degree. So a big presentation helps sell that more.
Because it's so stripped back, because it's just her scared in space, that if you're watching it on a laptop, it would be very easy to, if you're not immersed in that world, in there with her, there's not that much more to pull you in, which is, I think, partly why for quite a bit of it, I was a bit bored, because the moments when very directly her life was at risk, I was with her and terrified. But then the in-between ones where she's just trying to get to the next bit, I not disassociated, but became disconnected from what was going on. And that's because also with what I said before about it being stripped back, there's no B plot. There's nothing else going on in this film. We're not cutting to George Clooney in his play, wherever he is.
We don't go to Houston with people going, how are we going to get her down?
Yeah, which obviously is a very deliberate choice, right? That he wants us to just be with her the whole way, to be experiencing it with her. But I'm like, well, I would be bloody bored if I was. I'd be scared and stressed, but I'd also be like, God, there's nothing else to do. But
There's nothing to do.
there's nothing to do in space.
I can't WhatsApp anybody.
Literally, it's tapping into my attention deficit disorder. And I can't cope.
I think as well that the film often, I don't know if you noticed this, had point of view shots, very literal point of view, where it's clearly we are Sandra Bullock and you see the hands in front of which doesn't happen often in films.
Her helmet is fogging up.
Yeah, oh yeah, and I love the shot very early. Well, it's in the first 15 minutes where the first shot is like shot by Emmanuel Lubezki, by the way. Incredible cinematography, especially when you consider how it was made, which I might go into later, but not now. But the first shot is a long, uninterrupted take with lots of camera movement, and finally, when the debris hits, Sandra Bullock is cast adrift and she's spinning around, and the camera slowly starts moving towards her, and it gets closer and closer. And it, almost without you noticing it, the camera travels through her helmet. So you've gone from the outside of the glass inside, and you're right next to her face, and then the camera pans round. Then you see what she's looking at, and you look at the earth. So suddenly, for a brief moment, you have become the eyes of Sandra Bullock, and then the camera moves back onto her, and you see her face again, and we pull out. You are really being put in her shoes, in the most literal sense, really, which I think, again, draws you in. And if you are watching that on a laptop, probably won't work the same. You're probably just a bit distanced from it all.
I think the main thing is the vistas. I think this incredible representation of space and the planet from that position, that filling every part of your vision is what it's all about in this film, right?
And there's not many films where I've enjoyed the 3D. I've often thought the 3D is not very well implemented, or it's a little bit gimmicky, or it pulls you out of the story rather than pulls you in. I would say this is the only 3D film I've seen where it definitely works to pull you into the film more than it pulls you out of it. I think it's very well done. What did you think?
I actually think it did pull me out a bit, because every time something noticeably 3D happened, I would think, oh, that's cool. So I think I can't help but be always a bit pulled out, but I appreciated it. So I think
that's my reaction. I was the same. I was, yeah, that's cool, and I was pulled out, but I didn't mind because it was a cool thing to be pulled out by, I guess. Yeah.
So I think it was done as well as it ever could be done. So I was happy with it. I didn't have a problem with it whatsoever.
If you don't think you like 3D, you're probably right. But I say there's only one 3D film I'd recommend, and it's this one.
I want to talk a bit about Alfonso Cuarón, because as much as this film I have some misgivings about, but I will hasten to say I did really enjoy seeing in the cinema with you, babe. So I'm very grateful for your insistence. But my main thing is I'm like, wow, this is a real man who, like, I think he is a director who loves the challenge of directing, because this film is so different to his other films.
Yep.
Obviously, I was aware that he made Roma quite recently, but I didn't realize that he made a Tu Mama Tambien.
Yeah.
I probably mispronouncing that, but that's one of my favorite films. I love that movie, and it could not be more different to Gravity. Like, these films are like worlds apart, and both excellent in what they're trying to do. They're both nail. They achieve
their aims.
Exactly, yeah.
You want a coming-of-age sexy story? Fine. He took Mama Tambien. He's like one of the very best. If you want like a thrill ride space adventure, then off you go to Gravity. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Children of Men. I think that's one of his best films.
I've not seen that.
You've not seen Children of Men? Oh, man,
no.
Lily. Oof, I think it's an incredible film.
Okay.
As is, I also think his Harry Potter is the best Harry Potter of the franchise.
I was going to say, heralded as the best, though I believe she who shall not be named was not a fan.
She doesn't like it. She wasn't, because he changed too much stuff.
Yeah, no, it's out of a bad bunch. It's probably the best. Yeah, and also Little Princess. He did that, which
I've not seen.
Childhood favorite.
Really?
Fantastic film. I mean, I don't know how it stands up now as an adult, but it was one of my favorites when I was this little. So good.
And all of these films we're discussing as well, I think, apart from Little Princess, I think they were all shot as well by Emmanuel Lubetsky, or Chivo, as he's referred to. He's one of just the best cinematographers. So not only is it the same directors worked on those disparate films, but the same cinematographers, like the creative core is the same, but yet they're so varied.
That's just wild to me. It blows my mind, because he's actually not at all an auteur director in a way. Would you say?
I think he is an auteur director, but I know what you mean. He's not like a Tarantino or a Nolan, where his imprint is very clear. It's about watching a Quentin Tarantino movie more than it is watching a movie. Whereas Alfonso Cuarón is more about, I don't know, I can see in Gravity a lot of his style from Children of Men. Children of Men is lots of sustained long takes that develop.
Right, and that was the same with Tu Mama as well, actually. There was a lot of that.
So that is definitely part of his directorial style. I noticed that thread in a lot of his films. Even in Prisoner of Azkaban, it's more just occasional sequences of these long takes, especially with all the time travel stuff. There's these long takes. But so he does have a style, but he's just a bit more malleable, I think, than the directors we consider to be auteurs.
But that makes me like him even more, because it feels like he's got less ego, and it's just about creating the best piece of individual art, what makes sense for telling that story in the best way possible. Like, this is all in service of telling the story. Like, Gravity, the cinematic experience, all works to make us really like feel like we're there with Sandra Bullock and experiencing that story with her.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I think he worked on the film for 5 years, and everything, like the 3D is the best in class. You can tell that he's studied 3D, that him and his cinematographer, they've worked out what doesn't work and what looks cool. Because I agree with you, watching this film after 10 years, it still holds up so well. The effects are as close to flawless as you can get in a Hollywood film. You never, like you said, you don't really get pulled out by the fact that, oh, they're not really in space. You never really question that for the entire film. So well is it realized and sustained throughout the film.
Absolutely.
And when you see how they did it, when you realize that Sandra Bullock spent months by herself in a huge LED cube that she was surrounded by motion control cameras, so motorized cameras that were hurtling towards her very close to face at high speeds. That was her day-to-day job for months.
God, oh my God, literally my worst nightmare, but good for her.
But yeah, shows how great a director is and how great an actor is. You never feel that when you watch the film. You never think, oh, that's her alone in a box in a studio somewhere. You just she completely sells you on the fact that, no, she's adrift in space.
Yeah, okay. Let's bring it back to the cinematic experience proper.
Oh, yeah.
Because James, when we were discussing this episode, you specified what you called your classes of presentation. I don't know if you remember this, but I made notes.
It's more about the two types, the two classes of cinematic experiences. It's more like the fact that one of them is about the cinema itself and the screen and the projection, the quality and the great, how good all that is. And the other one is more...
Yeah, picture and sound I'd written down as part of class one.
Yeah, class one, that's the truest, purest cinematic experience is that how good is the presentation, how good the picture and sound.
Right, and that takes like first priority, right? You got to nail that first. Is that correct?
Sorry, it's not that that's first, the other one's second. It's that there's two separate categories to experience.
Okay, fine. So both are equal. Equal?
Yeah, I prefer number one, which is probably why it's number one. But number two, but not far behind, is just the environment you're going to see it in. So, for example, immersive theatre events. For example, I went to see the Grand Budapest Hotel at one of these secret cinemas. It was inside a hotel. You had actors in character going around. So things, or maybe you'll go to a cinema and it's an Art Deco cinema, so the surroundings are beautiful. That's another type of cinematic experience, which I think is just as valid, really. But the likelihood that you'll get that environment plus the best cinematic technical quality is unlikely.
When you saw the Grand Budapest Hotel, was there a 4K screening? Or a Dolby? How was it?
It was a bunch of chairs in a room, but
oh my God.
beautifully done. Yeah, I know. So there was no raking, Lily. It was completely flat. And once you sit in a completely flat cinema, you will really, really be yearning for some raking.
For me, I'm not really about that, because if I might as well see it in the comfort of my own home, on the sofa with like snacks and stuff. I think it does need to be that cinematic space. It has to be a cinema, I think, to make it work, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, we've been together. We've been to see 2001 on two separate occasions, when you very kindly bought me tickets for us to go for my birthday, when it was like a live orchestra and live choir along with the film itself.
Yeah.
And I loved it, and that was like the environment, the experience of that event was mind blowing. I'd never experienced 2001 like that. But then a little while later, it was getting re-released on a 70mm film print. I was like, let's go and see it on a film print so you can see the difference.
Yeah, so I saw 2001 for the first and second time within a couple of months of each other with James, which was nice because it's your favorite film. I felt quite honored to get this introduction into it. So which was better out of those two?
Oh, see, here you go. There's an emotional better. The emotional better was the fact that we went to see it at the Royal Festival Hall, and the fact that you bought me tickets for my birthday. We'd only known each other a little while, so I was really touched. So that's amazing for that. And then, but as far as the presentation and all that stuff, then it's the film print.
Yeah, it's got to be the film print. But I think 2001 is another good example of a film. Well, what do you think? I think that is a film. I don't think you can only see it in a cinema, but it definitely, again, really
works.
It really is meant to be seen on a big screen, I think.
Yeah, and I think that was the first film where I really understood the power of the cinematic experience. I was going to see that when I was 18 at the Pictureville Cinema in Bradford, which is worryingly closed down at the moment because they've got rack as well, that concrete area to concrete. So
oh no.
So yes, it's so anyway. So that hopefully that will get sorted. But yeah, so seeing that, and I had seen it on video before 2001, and I just thought it was boring old rubbish. To see it at the cinema, that was the first time I was like, oh, seeing a film at the cinema can make a difference for certain films.
I think actually, yeah, let's talk about the films which you really do need to see in the cinema, because I think that is also true of Tar. Tar that came out last year that we both loved. A friend of mine saw it, I believe, on her laptop, and she found it quite boring. She wasn't really into it, and I really feel like I would have probably felt similar if I'd watched it in that, because the film is so it's the sound. I think the sound with the shots.
Yeah,
two things. I think not that much happens in the film. Like, a lot is actually happening, but it's a very slow pace. You need to be in that environment, to
in that world,
immersed in it, to be captured by it, I think.
Yeah, I loved seeing Tar at the cinema, and I looked out. I happened to get one of the bigger screens in the Cineworld, so I was like very happy with that. And you've just pointed out a thing about the sound design. I mean, most people have very good TVs in the living rooms now, incredible TVs, but what most people don't have is a good sound system, or if not, they don't have a surround sound system. And that's one thing you get in every cinema screen. And like, to hear a good sound mix and to hear it surround you, like saying Tar, you're probably not even aware that there's surround sound going on, but it's subliminally immersing you in the world of that film. And yet, Tar is a very good example. It's a vibes movie, and I think the vibes are helped by being in the cinema, but almost by the fact that you are in this box of a room, so it almost feels claustrophobic, the story that you're watching, and even the cinema that you're in, it all adds to that.
Yeah, because that story, it's like both claustrophobic, but then there's also all these expanses of space. So these long shots of her driving through tunnels, you see the street ahead, and these huge concert halls where she works, and her very cavernous large flat. I think the combination of those two things does kind of echo the environment of the cinema, so it is definitely the place to see it. Are there any other films that come to mind? We didn't prep for this at all. This is off the cuff, but any other films that strike you as only really being suitable for the cinema?
Oh, well, for example, I think Dunkirk does not work unless it properly works. I mean, I think most Christopher Nolan films definitely work outside the cinema, but when you see them as he intended in IMAX, then that's the ultimate experience for them. But I think Dunkirk specifically, because it's very stripped back, doesn't really have characters as much as it's more about events and experiences, that to experience that in IMAX, it's mind-blowing. It's an ultimate cinematic experience.
I think that's what it comes down to, really. I think when there is less characterization and it's like you say, stripped back, I think that's when it's best suited to the cinema.
Yeah, I agree. And other films that I think are wonderful experience in the cinema, but I have to say they do work at home. But Star Wars, for example, you see Star Wars on a big screen, it's phenomenal. But it's also a cracking adventure on your TV. I was watching it recently, so It's not exclusively, but it certainly was designed for the cinematic experience, especially the surround sound. Wonderful.
Okay, I'm gonna at some point I'll have to give that a try.
Have you seen Dunkirk at the IMAX?
I can't lie. Don't think I saw it in IMAX. I saw it in the cinema.
Cool.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I'm just like, okay, next time that gets a re-release at the BFI, I'll hit you up for seeing that.
I would love to, actually. I would love that. I really did enjoy that, but I definitely think I wouldn't watch it at home on my laptop on the TV.
Yeah. It doesn't really work, to be honest. It doesn't really work, and it's quite stressful.
Yeah, that's it. It's the stress of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I feel like I need to be being forced to stay in my seat.
There's no escape.
Exactly. I need to feel like there's no escape to stick with it, because it is stressful.
But yeah, look, when I'm going to the cinema, I am looking for that special something that you can't quite put your finger on, that you only get from you've seen the film in a cinema. And yeah, I guess I'm always seeking that out. That's what I'm looking for. Every time I go see a new film, I'm always hopeful that I will just get something out of seeing it at the cinema that felt unique to being in the cinema.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I think that's right. For me, it's about being forced to be completely present. That's generally what I think it is. It's about the fact that we all have such terrible attention spans and find it hard to sit through a whole film when it's not going to disrupt anyone to look at our phone or pause it and go get a snack or whatever. I feel like it's so important to me to see something in the cinema, to be made to really experience it as you're meant to. Like, I want that full experience of being taken out of myself and completely immersed in a story, but I do not have the strength to do it for myself. I need the cinema to do it for me.
Needs to be forced to pay attention.
Exactly. So thank you for taking me to see Gravity, because I need that.
So would you say, I get the gist that you had a good time at Gravity. Would you say you enjoyed it more the second time round compared to what you can vaguely remember the first time round?
Yeah, I think, yes. I think very likely. I don't know though. I think I couldn't really remember it before we were watching it, but then as the film started to progress, it all did come back to me, and I remembered feeling the terror and being with her.
Okay.
In total honesty, I'm not sure, because I don't appreciate the quality of a screen or those sorts of things nearly as much as you do. So I'm not sure if I did. I have a feeling my feelings are very similar first to the last time, which was like enjoyed bits of it, was very moved, but also, yes, a teeny bit bored for some of it.
I mean, yeah, I start tuning out the bit where there's the guy she's chatting to on the radio. But
totally.
watching it, I do think there's got to be moments where they have to calm it down, just for A, to keep you engaged with the action when it does kick in, and B, to save money with the budget, because there's a lot of CGI, and they need bits in the film where there's no CGI, so that's why she has sequences inside the capsules.
Right.
So it allows moments of calm in the plotting, in the pacing, but also you don't need CGI for those sequences, and everything outside in space, that's CGI everywhere. So that's money, money, money.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Let's bring it back down to earth with the cold,
Dollars.
hard economics of the situation.
Which is obviously, all this shit goes through my head when I watch a film. Oh yeah, they've probably done that for pacing and monetary reasons. Yeah, and probably another reason why the film's 90 minutes long, because there's only 90 minutes of CGI to make.
I was gonna say I feel like I'm constantly being reminded of what a Philistine I am when it comes to the quality of presentation of a screen compared to you, James. But actually, when I was watching Killers of the Flower Moon, I did take a minute to be like, this is quite a great like, I thought about it a bit more. So you are changing how I see these things. I'm taking it in a bit more and appreciating the look of a film presentation more than I used to. So I'm great.
That's all I could ever hope for, Lily. Yeah, I'm super nerdy, way too off the scale as far as how into it I am. But as long as a little bit of that filters down, that's all I hope for.
Hopefully our listeners will take something away from this and appreciate going in a little bit more in depth into options of cinemas and how best to enjoy a film.
The main thing is the cinemas don't care about letting you know what you're getting for your money. The same money could get you a better experience than a worse one. And if I'm paying my money, I'd rather get the best experiences. Is how I pitch it. And
yeah, totally. And I think we have to highlight that, because we can all see films on our laptops, on phones, and everything. So it's important to
answer the question why. Why go to the cinema? What's the point of going to the cinema? Yeah.
Exactly.
And like I find with IMAX films, especially because the images are so large and so clear, that I often go to sleep and have intense dreams with all the visuals from the film, because I think they've burnt themselves onto my subconscious, which, I don't know, that's quite a fun thing for the cinema to have done to me.
Oh my gosh.
But Jordan Peele's Nope was fucking intense for all of us. We went to see that in IMAX.
I was going to say, I remember you messaged me after Taylor Swift saying, God, it's made such an impact on me. I keep thinking I might go see it again.
I just listened to a few tracks off her 1989 Taylor's version. I did a compare and contrast between the original and the re-release, yeah.
Okay, let's not get into that now.
No.
Okay, cool. Well, I feel like we've discussed everything we can discuss, read the cinematic experience. Shall we move on to a film pharmacy?
Absolutely.
Dear Lily and James, I recently moved back to London, having lived abroad for a year, and since my return, often can't help but feel, like many people at the moment, a bit bogged down by the current state of affairs in UK society. A seemingly never-ending stream of political scandals and depressing news stories makes me want to hop on another plane out of here. Do you have any movie recommendations that will help to remind me that it's not all bad when it comes to Britain and make me want to stay? From a disheartened but hopeful Groovy Movies fan.
We get the big questions here. God damn, that's a big ass, but yeah, okay.
We got this one a little while ago, but I feel like it's prescient now given how horrible everything in the news is right now. So what have you got, James? Do you have any suggestions to help us all take our minds off everything that's going on?
The thing that kind of keeps pulling me back down to earth is the fact that it's got to be a British film, a UK film, because I don't know.
Yeah. You don't think British cinema can do that for us?
It just doesn't really. It's films, British film. I struggle to immediately come up with British films
I had
that
quite
are
a few
optimistic.
came to mind for me.
Thank God, because the only one that keeps coming up for me is the full Monty.
Yes, that was the first thing that came to my mind. That, and then is it called a Brass Off?
Brassed Off, yeah.
Brassed Off, yes.
There was a little mini genre of films in the late 90s which were northern working class musical brass bands or something.
Yes, a group of unlikely northern guys who come together and overcome some kind of adversity.
Obstacles, yeah.
Yeah.
There's like a slew of them came out, but Full Monty is I love that. I mean, especially because I'm from Sheffield, so to hear the Sheffield accent, to see places, and to hear references that are like very Sheffield, yes.
Yeah.
Like in a Yorkshireman was happy, and it's a good feel-good movie.
Yeah, that film can't help but make you feel better about things. It's very uplifting, and I have to admit that. Okay, I say there are loads. I think there's actually just this one genre of British film, because the film that came to mind for me is, I think it's definitely an extension of that cinematic universe, which is Pride. You know, the film from 2014. If you haven't seen it, it's about the story of gays and lesbians supporting the miners as charity. So it's set in, even though it's made more recently, again, set in the 80s, like
80s,
during the miners'
working
strike.
class northern folk.
Yeah, but that film, it is so uplifting. It's just an amazing cast, of course, and funny, heartwarming, just all good things. And it's also about unexpected communities finding common ground and coming together, and I think that's a nice thing that I think we feel like we could all appreciate. Hopefully that will make you feel a bit better and not want to leave. Just watch these films and think, oh, there are some great people, perhaps more in the north on the whole, but that's fine. That's cool.
Be comforted by us northerners in our filmic form.
Okay, great. Well, I think that's it for another episode of Groovy Movies. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Absolutely, and if you could leave us a like or a review on our podcast, it all helps us get out to a wider audience.
Yes, and if you have any ideas, suggestions for themes you'd like us to talk about, we get them every so often on our Instagram. We also have a TikTok now. Big deal. Guys, no.
We are so down with the kids.
We're so down with the kids. Yeah, we're widening our community to more and more generations. But yeah, if you have any ideas of things you want us to talk about, just let us know. Drop us a DM or give us an email.
Absolutely.
We'd love to hear your suggestions.
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely.
All right. Well, we will see you next week.
See you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Follow us on Instagram at Groovy Movies Pod or email us groovymoviespod@gmail.com.
Groovy Movies was produced and edited by Lily Austin.
Music and sound by James Brailsford.
Our logo was designed by Abby-Jo Sheldon.
For references and more information about the films discussed, check out the show notes.